NVIDIA has officially started listing new job openings focused on Linux gaming, and this move could signal a major shift in the PC gaming landscape. For years, Linux gaming has been growing steadily in the background, powered largely by Valve's relentless push through SteamOS and Proton. Now, NVIDIA appears ready to take Linux much more seriously, and that could change everything. The company's new job listings specifically reference Linux graphics engineering and Vulkan optimization, and even mention gaming-focused development. That detail alone is significant. When one of the largest GPU manufacturers in the world begins actively recruiting engineers for Linux gaming, it is not a minor adjustment. It is a strategic decision. To understand why this matters so much, we need to look at how we got here. For decades, Windows dominated PC gaming. Microsoft's DirectX became the default graphics API, and GPU vendors naturally optimized around that ecosystem. Linux, while powerful and widely used in servers and development environments, was often treated as a secondary citizen for desktop gaming. Drivers lagged behind, feature support was inconsistent, and game studios rarely targeted Linux directly. The result was predictable. Gamers stayed on Windows because that was where the games and performance were. Then Valve changed the equation. Instead of trying to convince thousands of game developers to port their titles natively to Linux, Valve built a compatibility layer. Proton, based on Wine, translates Windows API calls, including DirectX, into Vulkan instructions that Linux can understand. Vulkan itself is a modern, low-overhead graphics API, designed to be cross-platform. It allows developers to extract more performance from hardware with less CPU overhead, and it runs on Windows, Linux, and even other operating systems. Proton effectively allowed Linux users to play Windows games without needing native ports. This was a revolutionary step. When Valve launched the Steam Deck, powered by SteamOS, it placed Linux at the heart of a mainstream gaming device. SteamOS is built on Linux, and Proton is the magic that allows the majority of the Steam library to function on it. Suddenly, Linux was no longer just for enthusiasts. It was shipping in millions of handheld gaming devices. Gamers who may never have considered Linux were using it daily without even realizing it. And this shift created pressure on hardware vendors. AMD, for years, has maintained relatively strong open-source driver support on Linux. Its GPU drivers are integrated into the Linux kernel and Mesa stack, and AMD's involvement in open-source graphics has often been praised by the Linux community. NVIDIA, on the other hand, historically relied on proprietary drivers. While these drivers often delivered strong performance, they were sometimes criticized for limited integration with the broader Linux ecosystem and slower adoption of certain open standards. NVIDIA did make progress in recent years, including opening parts of its kernel modules, but the perception remained that AMD was more aligned with the Linux philosophy. Now, NVIDIA's job listings suggest a renewed focus. The positions mention Vulkan graphics optimization and Linux graphics engineering with a specific emphasis on gaming workloads. That is not accidental wording. Vulkan is central to Proton's performance. When a DirectX game runs through Proton, it often uses DXVK or VKD3D to translate DirectX calls into Vulkan. The better a GPU driver handles Vulkan, the better those translated games perform. By hiring engineers dedicated to Vulkan optimization on Linux, NVIDIA is effectively saying it wants to maximize performance for Proton-powered gaming. This could have major implications for SteamOS and the broader Linux gaming ecosystem. If NVIDIA delivers highly optimized Vulkan drivers tuned specifically for Proton workloads, Linux gamers using NVIDIA GPUs could see improved frame rates, reduced stuttering, and better compatibility across a wide range of titles. Historically, some Proton users have reported that AMD GPUs sometimes deliver smoother experiences due to better Vulkan integration in Mesa. If NVIDIA closes that gap, or even surpasses it, the competitive landscape changes. There is also a strategic angle. Microsoft has been pushing Windows integration with its own services, subscriptions, and ecosystem controls. Valve, by building SteamOS on Linux, gains independence from Microsoft's platform decisions. If SteamOS continues to grow beyond the Steam Deck and perhaps enters desktops, living room PCs, or even future handhelds, NVIDIA would not want to be left behind. Supporting Linux gaming aggressively ensures that NVIDIA remains relevant in any scenario where Windows is no longer the default gaming OS. Another key factor is the evolving graphics API landscape. DirectX remains dominant on Windows, but Vulkan is increasingly important across platforms. Game engines like Unreal Engine and Unity support Vulkan. Many modern games are built with cross-platform engines that can target multiple APIs with relative ease. By investing in Vulkan optimization at the driver level, NVIDIA strengthens its position not just on Linux but across the entire multi-platform ecosystem. There is also the competitive dynamic with AMD. AMD GPUs power current generation consoles like the PlayStation and Xbox, and they also power the Steam Deck. That gives AMD a strong presence in gaming hardware across multiple platforms. If SteamOS expands further, AMD could naturally benefit due to its open-source friendly approach and existing driver integration. NVIDIA likely recognizes that leaving Linux gaming under-optimized could gradually shift mindshare toward AMD in enthusiast communities. For years, Linux enthusiasts often recommended AMD GPUs for the best out-of-a-box experience. NVIDIA's proprietary driver model sometimes required extra configuration, and Wayland compatibility challenges became a recurring topic. But the situation has been improving. NVIDIA has been working on better Wayland support, contributing to open kernel modules, and aligning more closely with Linux graphics standards. These new job listings indicate that the company is not stopping there. When you examine the language of the job descriptions, you see references to working closely with game developers, optimizing performance, debugging graphics issues, and ensuring top-tier gaming experiences on Linux. That suggests NVIDIA is not merely maintaining baseline compatibility, it wants to compete on performance and reliability. That is a different mindset from treating Linux as a niche platform. The timing is interesting. Linux gaming market share on Steam has been gradually increasing, driven partly by Steam Deck adoption. While still a minority compared to Windows, it represents millions of active users, and those users are highly engaged. They test games, report bugs, and actively discuss performance metrics. From a hardware vendor's perspective, this is an influential segment. Winning over Linux gamers can generate strong brand loyalty. There is also the data center and AI angle. NVIDIA dominates in AI accelerators and high-performance computing, and Linux is the backbone of those environments. Strengthening Linux expertise internally benefits more than gaming. Engineers specializing in Linux graphics stacks could also contribute to broader Linux driver improvements. While the job listings emphasize gaming and Vulkan, the underlying expertise could have ripple effects across NVIDIA's Linux offerings. Some might ask why it took NVIDIA this long. Linux gaming has existed for decades. Proton has been around for several years. Steam Deck launched in 2022. Yet NVIDIA is only now visibly ramping up Linux gaming-specific hiring. One possible explanation is market validation. Companies often wait until a trend proves sustainable before allocating significant resources. Steam Deck sales and the continued growth of Proton compatibility may have convinced NVIDIA that Linux gaming is not a temporary experiment. Another possibility is competitive pressure. If AMD continues to gain goodwill in Linux communities and that translates into purchasing decisions, NVIDIA cannot ignore it. Even if Linux gaming remains a small percentage of overall GPU sales, the enthusiast segment influences broader narratives about performance and openness. NVIDIA has long faced criticism over proprietary practices. A visible commitment to Linux gaming could help reshape its image. It is also worth considering the technical challenges. Optimizing for Proton is not the same as optimizing for native Windows DirectX workloads. Proton's translation layers introduce unique performance characteristics. Certain API calls may behave differently when translated through DXVK or VKD3D into Vulkan. Driver engineers need to understand these patterns deeply to optimize shader compilation, memory management, and synchronization effectively. Hiring specialists focused on these areas suggests NVIDIA wants to tackle those challenges head-on. For gamers, this could mean fewer compatibility headaches. While Proton has made enormous strides, edge cases still exist. Some games exhibit graphical glitches, performance inconsistencies, or anti-cheat incompatibilities. Although anti-cheat often involves developer cooperation, improved driver support can still resolve certain issues. If NVIDIA works closely with Valve and the Proton community, targeted driver updates could fix specific game problems more quickly. There is also the future of handheld gaming PCs to consider. The Steam Deck proved that a Linux-based handheld can succeed. Other manufacturers have mostly chosen Windows for their devices. but the concept of a lightweight, console-like Linux gaming system remains appealing. If more vendors adopt SteamOS or similar Linux-based gaming distributions, GPU support quality will be critical. NVIDIA does not currently power the Steam Deck, which uses an AMD APU, but future devices could explore different architectures. Being prepared with strong Linux gaming drivers keeps NVIDIA in the conversation. The broader industry trend toward openness and cross-platform development further supports this move. Developers increasingly value tools that allow deployment across Windows, Linux, consoles, and cloud platforms with minimal friction. Vulkan plays a key role in that strategy. By deepening Vulkan optimization expertise, NVIDIA aligns itself with that cross-platform future. From a marketing standpoint, NVIDIA could eventually highlight Linux gaming performance benchmarks in its promotional materials. Historically, most GPU reviews focus on Windows performance. If Linux gaming performance becomes competitive and measurable, it could open a new dimension of competition. Imagine GPU comparisons not just in DirectX 12 titles on Windows but also in Proton translated Vulkan workloads on Linux. That would have seemed niche a few years ago, but it is becoming increasingly relevant. Valve's decision to build SteamOS on Linux was bold. It signaled the desire to control its platform destiny and reduce reliance on Microsoft. NVIDIA's job listings suggest recognition that Valve's strategy is working. When a hardware giant adjusts its hiring priorities to align with an open-source-driven gaming ecosystem, that ecosystem has reached a new level of legitimacy. Ultimately, this development reflects the maturation of Linux gaming. It is no longer just a hobbyist pursuit. It is a commercial platform with real users, real revenue, and real strategic implications. NVIDIA, strengthening its Linux efforts, especially around Vulkan and gaming, could accelerate this momentum. AMD may indeed wonder what took so long, given its head start in open-source graphics integration. But competition benefits consumers. If both GPU giants actively compete to deliver the best Linux gaming experience, players win. The next few years could be transformative. Improved drivers, deeper Vulkan optimizations, and closer collaboration between NVIDIA and Valve could reduce the remaining barriers that keep some gamers on Windows. Linux may not overtake Windows overnight, but it does not need to. Even incremental growth, combined with strong hardware support, can reshape the ecosystem gradually. In the end, NVIDIA's new job listings are more than just hiring notices. They are signals. Signals that Linux gaming is being taken seriously at the highest levels of the GPU industry. Signals that Proton's success has forced a strategic response. And signals that the open-source gaming revolution, once considered improbable, is becoming a central chapter in the future of PC gaming.